Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about color theory, and this is something that we would have really hit during our intro to art last spring, but as you all know, we were all remote. So we are going to review it and make that up this semester and then apply it. So be able to do it with paint, colored pencil, chalk pastels. As long as you get the idea of color theory, you can apply it to any type of color. So we're going to be talking about color and where it comes from. Why do we see what we see? Color relationships, color tone, and then just some painting 101. And we're going to be doing some practice this week as well. So how is color created? Color is basically the result of what we see from reflected light waves. So I see a red apple because the object, the apple, is absorbing all the other light waves. So blue, violet, yellow, and it's reflecting red. So my eyes see red, and that's why we see what we see. So the visible color spectrum, what we are able to see is what you see right there. So those are all the colors that we are visibly able to see. But of course, that's not necessarily everyone. So some of you may be or might know someone that's colorblind. And if someone's colorblind, then their spectrum is a little bit different from everyone else's. So if you've ever been to the eye doctor, you might have seen something like this. What you should see is a green background and kind of a reddish orange 8. But if you're not able to differentiate red from green, then you wouldn't be able to see the 8. So what causes someone to be colorblind? Basically, if you have a defect in your cone cells, that impacts your ability to see red, green, and blue. And you might be able to see certain colors, but not others, or you might not be able to differentiate colors. So just because, why not, right? So this is actually what someone might be able to see. This is someone, that is able to see full color. And then here's some different types of colorblind. So you can kind of see what that looks like for somebody who's not be able to see the full range. So it doesn't mean that they can't see color at all. They don't see things in black and white. They just can't see the same spectrum that perhaps you and I see. All right, so the color wheel is basically the color spectrum, and it's bent into a wheel shape, and it helps us to understand color, color theory, so how to mix colors, how to put colors together. And in art, that's really, really important. So we're going to definitely be applying all of what we learn here. So some of you guys have had color theory and some of you haven't, or maybe it's been a long time. So if you have had it before, recall back to your grade school days. What are those first primary colors? So our first primary colors are the three that make up everything else. So your yellow, your red, and your blue. So from those three colors, you can mix any other color. So they're really important to have. So all the other colors generate from them, but you can't make them from other colors. So I can't mix anything to make yellow, and I can't mix anything to create red or blue. So you really need those three to start with. So your secondary colors are colors that are mixed from your primaries. So, and if you think about it, with where they're on the color wheel, it all makes sense. So for example, here's yellow and here's blue. So in between those is green. So yellow and blue make green. Or take yellow and red, and between those is orange. So yellow and red make orange, and blue and red mixed together make violet, right? So those are your secondary colors. You mix together your primaries to make them. So your third set of colors, if you're wondering, hey, what about all these other colors? So if they have two names, for example, yellow, orange yellow, or red orange, violet red, etc., those are colors that are mixed from a primary and a secondary. So if you take yellow and orange and you mix them together, you get yellow orange. Or if you take orange and red and mix them together, you get red orange. So altogether, you've got 12 different colors on the color wheel. Another thing we're going to talk about are complementary colors. And complementary colors, which is spelled a little bit different than the word complements. If you're thinking I misspelled it, no, it's a different word. But complementary colors are colors that are opposite one another on the color wheel. For example, orange and blue. And it's important to understand this for a couple of reasons. Number one, they emphasize each other. So if I really want a color to stand out, I can put it next to its complement, say yellow and purple. If I put, a yellow focal point inside of a purple mandala, it's going to really, really pop. But the other thing that's important to know about them, especially when painting, is that if you mix them together, they're going to make brown. So if I'm making this beautiful sunset and I want, blue and orange, I need to be smart about it because otherwise I'm going to get brown. So a lot of times when you're creating a sunset, you realize like, oh, I don't really want to put orange and brown right next to each other, or I need to really practice first. So it's smart to know what's going to happen when you mix two colors together before it happens. Okay, color intensity. So this is how bright or dull a color is. So the important thing to know is that a color in its purest form is going to be the brightest. So if I have a vivid green out of the bottle, if I add white to it, I'm dulling it a little bit. I am going to make it lighter, but I'm also dulling it. If I'm adding black to it, I'm making it darker, but I'm also dulling it. It's not quite as pure. Or if I add some of the complements, say I take a little bit of red to that green, I'm dulling it down a little bit. So you can kind of see on here the original form and then how the colors have been a little bit dulled down over time. So that's important to know, if you're trying to make a neon green, don't add white to it. It's just going to make it lighter and duller. You'd want to add yellow instead. Saturate versus desaturate, I think it's just kind of an important word to know. So saturating means bright colors. So for example, if you open that bottle of green and it's this really bright, vivid green, that's a fully saturated color. If I start adding white to it or a little bit of the complement, then I'm desaturating it. I'm kind of taking away some of that color. You've probably seen it on your phone before if you edit your photos. Another thing important to know, your warm colors versus your cool. We're going to be talking about tones in a second. So your warm colors are on this side of your color wheel, your reds, your oranges, your yellows, and then your cools are on this side, your purples, your blues, your greens. And that's important to know just for color relationships, but it's going to become really important when we start doing tones. The other thing about color, we talked about adding whites and blacks. So if you're wanting to add values in color, same thing. So the more white you add, the lighter the value. The more black you add, the darker the value. We call adding white a tint and adding black a shade. And lastly, color tone, which we're going to hit a little bit later this week. So color tone basically means that you can have your color, so let's say red, and you can have warm versions and cool versions of that color. So if we looked at this, we would probably just say, yeah, shades of red, right? If you look over here, you've got your warmer shades of red. And if you look over here, you've got your cooler shades of red. So the hue is red, but we have all these different versions. So if I started with red, and I added a little bit of orange to it or a little bit of yellow, I'd get some of these warmer colors. And if I added a little bit of purple per se or a little blue, I'd get some of these cooler colors. So it's important to know when you're mixing paint that, there's all these different versions, cool and warm, of a color, and that's what really creates a three-dimensional looking painting. So we'll get to that a little later. Okay, a couple of things when you're painting. Do you want to add the darker color to the lighter color? Or add the lighter color to the darker color? So if you did this at home, you did a little experiment, you'd find that if you take a color like white and you add black to it, that white disappears really quickly and becomes gray. But if I take a little bit of the black and add it to the white, I have a little bit more control over getting my color. So I always want to start with a light color and then I add the darker color to it. The white color is weaker than the darker color, so the darker color is dominant. Dominant color, just tiny little bit. Couple other painting tips. You want to use a palette knife or something to mix. You can even use like a spoon or a fork or just Q-tip. But you want to use something to mix your colors so your brush doesn't get diluted. So say I'm making orange and I'm using yellow and red to do that. I'm still going to kind of have red in my brush and yellow in my brush. So I might get like streaks of color. Use something else to mix them and then your brush to actually paint with. Also, you want to use your brush to softly pull. So this is not a situation where we're, going like this. We're pulling the paintbrush across the page gently. So if you can make small, controlled, kind of glide movements, you're going to have a lot more control than if you're just, going like this or pushing. So it's a gentle glide. You control your hands. We talked about this. You always want to start with the lighter color, add small bits of the darker color. Make sure you're thinking about the the direction of your brush strokes. I just realized I have an extra number in here. I'm gonna have to go back for that. When you're painting, you don't want all over the place, especially when you're trying to control. You wanna, go in the same direction. So hopefully this was helpful with a little bit of color theory, and you'll be able to apply this to your assignments this week.